Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well today. I know it's been a while since I posted a video, so I wanted to create a simple JavaScript slideshow application to get things started again. And we're just going to be using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in VS Code. So let's jump right into it. So here I have a background, and all I have is images coming from this API, pixum.photos, and it's just a list of images that we can grab using this API URL. And it's just going to be a slideshow where the image fades out and then it slides in. All right, so let's get started in VS Code. All right, guys, so I have VS Code open here. I'm going to generate our boilerplate HTML by pressing Shift-1 Enter. All right, and then in the title, I'm going to call this slideshow. And first thing what I'm going to do is load in our CSS and JavaScript. Okay. And then I can use them in here saying script source index.js. Okay, so all we're going to have in here is a main tag, and then we're going to have a section with a class of Slideshow Container. And that's all we need with our HTML. In our CSS, we're going to have apply 0 margin to the body tag. And then we are going to add a gradient here that I got from a website called uigradients.com if you're interested. All right, and then for now we are going to also in section, it should be a slideshow container. So we're going to use display flex here, and I'm going to center the image. So the way I can do that is using flexbox. Set the height to, let's say, 90 vertical height, and then we're going to say justify content center, and then align items center. And then also I'm going to add a overflow hidden so that we can add our animations here in the future. So now if I add in a text, I'm going to right click and open this with Live Server. If you guys don't have that extension, you want to download it from the marketplace here. So as you guys can see, test is right in the center, which is what we want. Perfect. So I'm going to get rid of that. And then for now, that's it for the CSS. We'll come back to that after. So the way we're going to implement the slideshow is we're going to use an immediately invoked function expression. Instead of writing, line by line, document dot query selector, and then add the event handlers and all that, we're going to do all that in an IIFE. I know that there are a lot of YouTube videos on it, but I don't see a lot of examples implementing one. So I wanted to show you guys and take advantage of how we can use this here for this very simple application. So we're going to have an open parenthesis with a function inside of it. And then we're going to have an open close parenthesis, which means this will be invoked as soon as this script is loaded. Okay, so as you can see here, if I do console.log test, this script will be called, let's see what happened here. Oh, I named this incorrectly. Okay, so test is called immediately. All right, so what we're going to do is get our API data here, which are the images. So we're going to use this API URL. If you guys go to pixum.photos, all right, so we're going to have a function called load images. And then we'll have a constant string of image API. We'll paste that API URL in, and we don't need to do any pagination here. We're just going to load in one image for now. We're going to use the fetch API to grab the image data. We'll get a response of promise. So we're going to convert that to JSON. So we can say .then response.json, which will be converted. Then we get our image data. And I will console.log that image data to see how that looks. Okay, and we need to call this function load images. Oh, well, I should probably console.log this. All right, so we get an array of objects here. So we get one object back, which because we called in a limit of, we set a limit of 1. All right, so here I'm going to create a new function saying load images into section. So we're going to dynamically load our images into the section. And then we'll call that function from here, pass in the image data. So load images into section, pass in image data. Okay, so now we're going to loop through this using a for each loop. So we're going to say image data dot for each. In the function, we'll just say data. And we can just use some quick object destructuring here and just grab the download URL. Just grab what we need. And all we need here is just the download URL, which is the image itself, which will be loaded. Okay, so here we're going to say let image tag. Okay, so we're going to use document.create element. We're going to create an image element. And then in the image element, we are going to add a couple things. So image tag dot source is equal to download URL. Image tag. So we're going to keep track of each image, giving it an ID. So the ID will just be a counter from however many images there are that we grab. So we're going to create a counter variable here, set that equal to 1. And we're going to say set attribute data-id counter. And then we'll increment it at the end. All right, so let's see, is there anything? Yes, we also need to set a height and width. So we can say image tag.style.height. Okay, we want to give this some decent aspect ratio, so let's do 350 pixels. And then let's give this a width. And I would advise using a class here instead of giving this inline styling, but for this tutorial it's fine. Okay, and then we're going to append this to the Slideshow Container section. So what we can do here is just grab the element once, store it in a variable. So we can say Slideshow element is equal to document.querySelector. And then we'll say Slideshow Container. All right, so now that we have that, we can say Slideshow element dot append child. All right, and we're going to append the image tag. So as you guys can see there, we get our image, which is what we want. And let's make sure that it's centered, which it is. And then as you guys can see here, we have our data ID attribute. Okay, so let's load in 2 images now. Let's see how we can implement this. So now we have 2 images side by side, which is what we don't want. So we're going to have a couple classes here. Okay, we're going to have an active class and an inactive class. So inactive will display none, and active will just display block. Okay, so how do we implement this? So what we're going to do is we have this counter, right? So if counter is equal to 1, we will say image tag dot class name is equal to active. Else image tag dot class name is equal to inactive. Alright, so now we have that one, which is what we want. Perfect. And then also now that we have more than one showing, so whenever we implement our slideshow functionality, we need to toggle between the proper images. So we need to keep a track of what image is the last one so that we can loop back to the first image. So a simple way we can do that is saying let image count is equal to image data dot length. Okay, and then we have an if condition here saying if counter is equal to image count. Alright, so if it's the last one, we're going to say image tag dot data set, or actually we're going to say set attribute data dash last, and we're going to set that to 1. Alright, so let's see how that works. I'm going to inspect that, and you can see that data dash 1 is set right here, which is what we want. Alright guys, so what's the next thing we want to do? We want to implement our slideshow functionality. Okay, so we're going to create a function here called let slideshow equal the function. We're not going to pass anything into this function. And what we're going to do here is in this function, we're going to call set interval. All right, and this is going to take a function, and we will call this every 5 seconds. And you guys can set this to whatever you like. And we'll call the slideshow function. So what's going to happen in here? So first thing we want to do is we want to grab the active image. So we're going to say let active image element equal to document.querySelector. Set that equal to active. Okay, so we're going to get the active image element. So we want to grab the ID of that active image, which is 1, and we want to add 1 to it to grab the second one. So we're going to create a new variable saying new ID is equal to active image element dot dataset dot ID. Oh, dataset dot ID. Okay, so we want to add 1 to it, but data attributes are strings, so we need to convert this to an int. And you know what we can do is just say ID is equal to that, which is an int, and then we'll just say new ID is equal to ID plus 1. Now there's one case that we do need to take care of, which I mentioned already, is if the data dash last is equal to 1, we need to loop back to the first ID. Okay, so what we're going to check here is if active image element.dataset.last is equal to 1. Okay, well if it's equal to 1, we're going to set the new ID back to 1. Otherwise, we're going to increment from the data dash ID of the active image element. All right. And then we will we're going to use query selector to grab the data dash ID attribute, which will grab the image element, and we'll set the class to active on that. So we'll say document.querySelector. All right, so it open bracket data dash ID equal to quotes, concatenate it with the new ID, finish the quote off, and oh wait, finish the double quote off, add the closing bracket to it, and then do class name is equal to active. Okay, so let's see how this works. So the slideshow function should be getting called after 5 seconds, and something went wrong. Okay, let's see. Okay, I know what I did. I missed. So we need to, after that we get all that ID stuff, we can give this class name, and we need to set it to inactive. Alright, so now it should work. Perfect. So the slideshow is working. So now let's go ahead and add the animations like we have here, where it will fade out and then slide in. So we need to create some keyframes here. So we can say keyframes fade out. So at 0%, we'll set the opacity to 1. At 100%, we will set the opacity to 0. Okay, and let's give this an animation and call it fade out. Okay, and let's make the duration 0.5 seconds. We'll kind of play around with that as we need to. Ease out, and the animation fill mode will be both. Okay, we need to create one more animation. So we'll do keyframes, slide in. Okay, at 0%, we're going to use a transform property here. Translate x. 0% is going to be negative 100%. So meaning it's going to be outside the container, shifted negative 100%. And since we have the overflow hidden, we won't be able to see that, which is what we want. So at 100%, we're going to set the transform property, translate x, we're going to set it back to 0. All right, and then we're going to create a class called slide in. Give this an animation of slide in. We'll give the duration of 1 second, ease in out, or let's do ease in, let's try that. So I'm going to do one thing and not call this function just for 1 second, so we can test and see that our animations are working. And the way we can test that is simply by adding the class to it. So there's a class right here. We can just say fade out. Okay, so the image will fade out. And then we're going to say slide in. Okay, cool. That should work for now. Okay, so we'll uncomment this back. Okay, so the thing here is that we need to look out for is the inactive class, which is going to set it to display none. So we need to first set the class name to fade out, let that transition happen, and then just use display none to completely hide it. So the way we are going to do this is active image element dot class name is going to be set to fade out first. Then we're going to have a set timeout. We made the duration last for 0.5 seconds. So we'll say after 1 second, add the class inactive to this. So we're going to say class list dot add. And then we'll add inactive to that. And then we're also going to put everything else in here, where we make the inactive image active after 1 second. All right. And we're also going to give this active and slide in. All right, guys, let's see how this works. So 5 seconds go by, it's going to fade out and then slide in. So as you can see, the image doesn't have enough time to fade out, it seems like. Let's kind of increase that set timeout and see if that helps. All right, and what we're going to do here is now add 10 images and see how that works. All right, that looks really good to me. Probably not the best thing, but it's a tutorial that shows you how to use a immediately invoked function expression. That was really the main purpose of me wanting to really make this tutorial. We can make this into an actual component in JavaScript itself, if you think about it, where you can pass in some images and it will create a slideshow based on that. Alright guys, that's it for the tutorial. If you like this content, please consider liking and subscribing. Stay tuned for more. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.